Okay, here's the first video installment for my Upward Bound students, West Virginia State University. Treat this just like you would an in-class session. You need to take notes, document in your notes the key terms, and I'll direct you as we go with definitions. Make sure you do a good job because you'll need to turn these in at some point since this is a video lecture. And I'm doing this given our time constraints because of the water problems. So make sure you do a good job with this. This falls in line with Chapter 9. You need to be reading Chapter 9 if you haven't already on lifespan development. So we're going to be talking about what happens to us as human beings, what happens to us physically, emotionally, cognitively, sexually, all these things as we develop. And that's kind of what we're getting at here. The example I like to use first are pets. If you've had a cat or a dog or a bird or even a lizard, anything, you probably remember what your pet looked like at the very beginning as a baby, if you will, and what it may look like now or what it looked like right before it died. Obvious signs of physical development are there. So there's obvious evidence of physical development. I'm going to use newborn golden retriever puppies. You can kind of see that they look very young, very cute. And if we were in class, everyone would utter a collective "aww," right? Now at 6 months of age, still pretty cute, right? We can see that they're still pretty small, right? And then at 2 years of age, an obvious physical jump in development. At 5 years of age, you can see the dog has obviously physically matured more. If you looked at an image of this dog, you wouldn't assume that this dog was a newborn pup. Then at 10 years of age, we see more signs of physical maturity. And yes, some dogs live to be 15, and this golden retriever is 15. How about 20? It's very rare, but yes, dogs can live to be 20 years of age, so there are obvious signs of physical maturity there. There are also very obvious signs of physical development in human beings. And the example I'm going to use is the world-famous actress Elizabeth Taylor. Some of you may have never heard of Elizabeth Taylor. Very, very famous actress. Some people contend she was the most beautiful woman ever in terms of the entertainment industry in Hollywood. So we'll take you through some of her images. We'll start at a very young age here. I think she was about 12 or 13 at this point. Then we get into age 16 or 17. Then we're looking at her mid to late 20s. This is the same person. Now we're going to see her around the age of 50. Then we're going to see her as she approaches her 70s. And then we see her right before her death, and she has passed. So obvious signs of physical development. You can see the very first picture juxtaposed with the very last image. As human beings, we mature over the years, in very specific ways. Now, your textbook talks about some basic processes. We'll start with maturation, and I'm going to give you the definition of maturation. We all mature in different ways. Maturation is the developmental process that produces genetically programmed changes in the body, brain, and or behavior with increasing age. So write that down. Again, maturation is the developmental process that produces genetically programmed changes in the body, brain, and or behavior with increasing age. If we think of the human being as it develops, we start out as embryos. And I've got an image of an embryo right here for you. An embryo is the developing baby from the point where the major axis of the body is present until all major structures are present. And this spans from about 2 weeks to 8 weeks after conception. So you're looking at essentially 2 weeks to 8 weeks after conception. Now the fetus, by definition, is the developing baby in the final phase of development in the womb from about 8 weeks on to birth. And you can see an image of the fetus. So people refer to embryos and fetuses. You've got some time frames now to kind of work with. So even the unborn child develops physically in very specific ways through this process of maturation. Now, the book also talks about teratogens. Now, let me give you a definition of a teratogen, and then I'll give you some examples, and we'll talk about those. A teratogen is any external agent. It could be chemicals like drugs or alcohol, viruses like the German measles, it could be radiation, anything like that that can cause damage to the unborn child. There's a ton of research that suggests that pregnant women can do a lot of things to minimize teratogens, including not smoking while pregnant, consuming alcohol while pregnant, exposure to radiation, even some legally prescribed medications that women are on, they have to stop taking because they can have adverse impact on the unborn child, and any kind of a virus. Now, most of these things women can control. You can control radiation, alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. Things that mothers can't control are viruses, and maybe in some cases radiation. So certainly there are steps that mothers can take to minimize risk to the unborn child. Now, let's think about some concepts or ideas that impact our human development. If we were in class, I would just simply ask the question, what things impact your development? Because most of you guys are 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years of age, somewhere in that range. So what has impacted your development? You might say your upbringing, the kinds of parents that you have or don't have, school system that you have come through or are coming through. How about the foods that you eat? If your diet is poor, or if you don't exercise, if, God forbid, you are physically, sexually, or emotionally abused, any kind of trauma such as that, and anything that we've talked about so far with this slide can impact your development for better or for worse. Now, we obviously develop physically. You can kind of see the growth years and the career years there from ages 0 to 21, and then the family years at age 30. And then around age 50, we start to experience physical deterioration. We start to experience degeneration of the body. Things start to break down. And then in the retirement years at the age of 60 and beyond, and to the point where we no longer exist on the earth, we die. Again, just another image of physical development from birth to old age. Now, socialization. This is another term that you're going to want in your notes. This is the lifelong social experience by which people develop their human potential and learn culture. We are all socialized in various ways to be members of our culture. We've talked about it a little bit in class already. We are socialized by our parents, by our teachers, by our religious leaders. Certainly the media with the internet especially has a lot to do with how we are socialized and how we learn what it means to be a part of our culture. So again, in class, if we were sitting in class, I would ask you to think of ways we are socialized to be members of our culture. And I kind of gave it away there with some of my previous answers. So, what about how your personality is formed or developed? We've talked a little bit about personality disorders, but not much about personality in and of itself. Your personality is formed based largely, well, some on genetic stuff, but largely upon your social environment, what's going on around you, how you are socialized. Your personality, I'm going to shift my camera here. Your personality, by definition, refers to a person's fairly consistent pattern of acting, thinking, and feeling. And everyone has a personality. And everyone's personality is a little different than the next person's personality. And I'm going to go ahead and call this the end of the first part here. Thank you.